Picture this moment. A pair of weathered hands hovering over pristine ivory keys. Hands that have scrubbed 1,000 floors, emptied 1,000 trash bins, wiped down 1,000 surfaces. Hands that society told to stay in their lane, to know their place, to just clean and move on. But right now, in the dim amber glow of St. Mary's Hospital lobby at 11:47 p.m., those hands are trembling. Not from age, not from exhaustion, from something far more powerful, from 15 years of silence finally demanding to be broken. Calvin Jenkins sits before a $90,000 Steinway concert grand piano. His janitor's uniform still carries the faint scent of industrial cleaner. His name tag hangs crooked on his chest. And just 30 minutes ago, a woman in a $1,500 suit stood in this exact spot and told him, quote, "Don't you dare touch that piano. Just clean. That's what you're paid for." Her name is Victoria Harlow, hospital board member, daughter of old money, believer in keeping people in their proper boxes. She has no idea who Calvin really is. Nobody does. Calvin's right hand moves. His index finger touches middle C. The note rings out pure and clear, cutting through the antiseptic silence of the hospital like a beam of light through darkness. Then his left hand joins. Then both hands find their rhythm. And suddenly, impossibly, the sterile lobby of St. Mary's Hospital transforms into something else entirely. Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata pours from the piano. Not the hesitant plunking of an amateur, not the mechanical precision of a student. This is artistry. This is soul made audible. This is 15 years of grief and longing and buried beauty finally set free. Down the hallway, a night shift nurse stops mid-step. In the ICU waiting room, a father who hasn't slept in 3 days lifts his head. At the security desk, a guard who's worked here for 20 years slowly rises from his chair. The music swells and people begin to move toward it like moths to flame. But here's what you need to understand. Here's the question that will haunt you for the next hour. Here's the mystery we're about to unravel together. How does a hospital janitor play like this? Why hasn't anyone heard him before? What happened 30 minutes ago that made him risk everything? And what will happen when Victoria Harlow comes back through that door because she's coming back? And when she does, everything will change. But to understand this moment, to really grasp what's happening right now in this hospital lobby, we need to go back. We need to understand who Calvin Jenkins really is. We need to see the path that led a maestro to wear a janitor's uniform. So let's rewind. Let's go back to where this story really begins. Not 30 minutes ago, not 15 years ago, but to a small apartment in Detroit 53 years ago, where a little boy named Calvin first laid eyes on a piano. If you walk through St. Mary's Hospital at 3 in the morning, you'll encounter a particular kind of quiet. It's not true silence. Machines still beep, ventilators still hiss. Somewhere someone is always crying or praying or both. But there's a stillness to the late night hours, a held breath quality that the daytime chaos never knows. And in that stillness, you'll find Calvin Jenkins, 63 years old, 5'9", solid build that speaks to decades of physical labor, skin the color of worn mahogany, gray threading through his close-cropped hair, hands large and capable with calluses on the palms, but surprisingly elegant fingers. He's worked the night shift at St. Mary's for 15 years. 4 nights a week, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Cleaning surgical suites, mopping corridors, sanitizing waiting rooms, restocking supply closets. The work is invisible by design. Good janitorial work means nobody notices. If a floor shines, people just walk on it. If a bathroom sparkles, people just use it. The better Calvin does his job, the less anyone sees him. And that's fine with Calvin. He prefers invisibility these days. Watch him work, and you'll notice something unusual. He doesn't just clean. He moves through the hospital with a peculiar reverence, as if the building itself were sacred. When he mops the pediatric ward, his strokes are gentle, quiet, careful not to wake sleeping children. When he empties trash in the oncology wing, his face carries a solemn awareness of what those rooms contain. Stories, battles, last moments. Other janitors wear earbuds, listen to music or podcasts to make the hours pass. Calvin works in silence. Always has. He says he likes to hear the building breathe. But here's what you need to know about Calvin's route. Here's the detail that matters. Every single night between midnight and 1 a.m., Calvin's cleaning path takes him through the main lobby. And every single night he stops. Just for a moment. Just long enough for people to barely notice if they're paying attention, which they usually aren't. He stops in front of the grand piano. It sits in the center of the lobby like a beautiful corpse. A Steinway Model D concert grand, donated 15 years ago by the Whitmore Foundation. 9 feet long, gleaming black lacquer brass pedals that catch the light. The kind of instrument that belongs in Carnegie Hall, not a hospital lobby. The donation came with conditions. The piano must remain in the public space. It must be available for hospital events. It must be maintained in concert-ready condition. What the Whitmore Foundation didn't include in their conditions was this someone to actually play it. So it sits. Dusted weekly. Tuned quarterly. Played almost never. A $90,000 decoration. A symbol of culture that the hospital can point to when wealthy donors visit. And every night, Calvin stops in front of it. He doesn't touch it. Never has. Not once in 15 years. He just pauses with his mop or his cleaning cart, and he looks. If you were watching closely, very closely, you might see his right hand twitch slightly, fingers moving in small, unconscious patterns. You might see his lips move silently, counting something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You might wonder what he's thinking, but you'd never guess. Not in a million years. Because Calvin Jenkins doesn't look like a musician. He looks exactly like what he is. A janitor, a working man. Someone society has placed in a box labeled service worker and forgotten about. Society is very good at forgetting, but the piano remembers. Every night when Calvin stops in front of it, the piano seems to recognize him. The way it catches the light, just so. The way the silence around it deepens when he's near. Almost like it's waiting. Waiting for hands that understand it. Waiting for someone to wake it from its 15-year sleep. Tonight, that wait will finally end. But first you need to understand why it's been waiting at all. Calvin Jenkins was born in Detroit in 1962. His mother cleaned houses. His father worked at the Ford plant until the layoffs came, then drove a taxi, then did whatever he could find. They lived in a third-floor walk-up on the east side, where the walls were thin and money was thinner. When Calvin was 7, something remarkable happened. A piano appeared in their building's basement. Nobody knew where it came from. Just showed up one day, ancient and battered, missing several keys, completely out of tune. The landlord didn't want it. Told everyone he'd haul it to the dump at the end of the month. Calvin found it first. He sat on that cracked bench and pressed down on the keys, and even though half of them didn't work, and the ones that did sounded like wounded animals, Calvin heard something else. He heard possibility. He heard music not as it was, but as it could be. His mother found him there 3 hours later, still playing the same broken notes over and over, trying to find a pattern. She couldn't afford piano lessons, could barely afford rent. But she made a deal with Mrs. Chen 2 floors down, a widow who'd taught piano in Shanghai before immigrating. Mrs. Chen would teach Calvin. In exchange, his mother would clean her apartment every week. Calvin was a natural. Within 6 months, he was playing pieces that students twice his age struggled with. Within a year, Mrs. Chen told his mother she'd never seen anything like it. The boy had perfect pitch, hands that instinctively found the right shapes. And something else, something harder to define. An emotional connection to the music that couldn't be taught. He lived for those lessons, practiced on that broken basement piano until his fingers bled. Did his homework with sheet music spread across the kitchen table. Fell asleep, hearing sonatas in his head. By 16, Calvin had won a full scholarship to the Detroit School of Arts. By 20, he'd completed a music education degree at Wayne State University. By 22, he was teaching piano to elementary school students at one of Detroit's most underserved public schools. He found his calling there. Teaching music to kids who looked like him, who came from neighborhoods like his, who'd been told by 1,000 subtle and not-so-subtle messages that classical music wasn't for them. Calvin taught them differently. He didn't just teach technique. He taught them that Beethoven was a revolutionary, that Chopin wrote protest music, that the piano was an instrument of freedom. He held after-school programs, weekend workshops, summer intensives, all unpaid, all because he believed. For 20 years, Calvin Jenkins taught music in Detroit public schools. He married Angela, a nurse he met at a community health fair. They had a small house, a smaller income, but enormous joy. On Sundays, Calvin played piano at their church. On Tuesday nights, he accompanied Angela's choir practices. Music wove through their life like golden thread through dark fabric. He never became famous, never played Carnegie Hall, never recorded an album. That was fine. Calvin measured success differently. He measured it in the eyes of a 10-year-old girl finally understanding a difficult passage, in the pride of a teenage boy performing his first recital, in the way music could lift a struggling student out of their circumstances, even if just for 30 minutes. But here's what happens to public education in cities where industry dies and tax bases evaporate. Here's what happens to arts programs when budgets get slashed year after year after year. They disappear. In 2006, Calvin's position was eliminated. Budget cuts. They kept the math teachers the reading specialists. They let go of the music teacher. Nobody asked if maybe possibly the arts might be just as essential as algebra. Calvin found other work, taught private lessons out of his house, accompanied local theater productions, played weddings and funerals, cobbled together enough to get by barely. Then Angela got sick. Ovarian cancer. Stage 3 by the time they caught it. Aggressive treatment, brutal side effects, and medical bills that no amount of private piano lessons could cover. Calvin sold his personal piano to pay for her chemotherapy, took a second job as a night stalker at a warehouse, then a third job cleaning office buildings on weekends. He stopped teaching. No time, no energy, and honestly, no heart for it anymore. Music had been joy, and joy felt obscene while his wife was dying. Angela fought for 2 years. In the end, the cancer won. Calvin buried her in 2009. The medical debt buried him. He had nothing left. No piano, no job, no purpose. Just debt collectors calling and an empty house that echoed with absence. A friend who worked at St. Mary's Hospital mentioned they needed a night janitor. The pay wasn't much, but it came with health insurance. Benefits, stability. Calvin took it, moved from Detroit to Chicago for a fresh start that felt more like an ending. Started the night shift. and made a promise to himself. He would never touch a piano again. Music had been his life, his joy, his gift, and it had all led here to mopping floors at 3 a.m. with nothing to show for it but debt and grief. So he locked that part of himself away, buried it deep, became invisible. For 15 years, he kept that promise. Until tonight. St. Mary's Hospital hosts an annual fundraising gala every spring. The Healing Hearts Gala, they call it. 500 of Chicago's wealthiest residents paying $1,000 a plate to eat catered salmon and write tax-deductible checks while feeling charitable. This year's gala is in 3 days. The hospital has pulled out all the stops. The main lobby has been transformed. White lights strung along the railings, floral arrangements the size of small cars positioned strategically, catering staff in and out all week, testing layouts and acoustics. And at the center of it all, finally the Steinway will be played. The hospital hired a pianist, some guy from the Chicago Symphony. He'll perform during cocktail hour background music while donors network and sip champagne. The kind of playing you don't really listen to, just appreciate abstractly while discussing golf handicaps and stock portfolios. But first, the piano needed work. 15 years of minimal use had left it playable, but not performance-ready. So 2 weeks ago, technicians came. Regulation voicing tuning. They treated that Steinway like the thoroughbred it is. When they finished, the head technician ran scales and declared it, quote, the finest sounding piano in the Midwest. It's ready. The hospital is ready. Which brings us to tonight, Thursday, 3 days before the gala, 11 p.m. Victoria Harlow, board member and event chair, makes an unscheduled inspection. Victoria is 62 but looks 50. Money buys good skincare. Personal trainers, strategic cosmetic procedures. She wears her silver hair in a precision bob that probably costs more than Calvin's monthly rent. Tonight, charcoal pantsuit, burgundy silk blouse, heels that echo sharply on the freshly waxed floors. She walks through the lobby with an event planner in tow, checking sight lines and lighting. The gala is her baby. Everything must be perfect. The hospital board judges success by dollars raised, and dollars raised come from keeping wealthy donors happy. Victoria stops in front of the piano, runs one manicured finger along its edge, examines the finger, frowns. There's dust, she says. The event planner stammers something about the cleaning crew. I want this piano spotless, Victoria says. Tomorrow, first thing. Nobody touches it except to clean it. Understood. This instrument is worth more than most people make in a year. She says it loud enough that her voice carries. Loud enough that Calvin, mopping near the elevator bank, hears every word. Calvin knows to stay invisible during these inspections. The hospital's wealthy donors and board members don't like being reminded that someone has to actually clean up after them. He keeps his head down, mops, efficiently plans to finish this section and move to the next wing. But Victoria notices him. You? She calls out. Come here. Calvin sets down his mop, walks over. Yes, ma'am. This piano, Victoria says, gesturing. I need it cleaned, tonight. But listen very carefully. She leans in slightly, and her voice drops to a tone that's somehow more cutting for its quietness. Do not touch the keys. Do not open the lid. Do not sit on the bench. Just dust and polish the exterior. Can you handle that? Yes, ma'am, Calvin says evenly. I'm serious, Victoria continues. This is a $90,000 instrument. It's been prepared for a professional performance. I can't have... She pauses, looking him up and down. Unqualified hands damaging it. The event planner looks uncomfortable. This is crossing a line and everyone in the lobby feels it. But Victoria isn't done. "Do you even know what kind of piano this is?" she asks Calvin. There's a pause. Calvin could answer. Could tell her it's a Steinway Model D built in the Hamburg factory, based on the serial number probably from the early 2000s based on the action design. Could tell her that the hammers have been recently voiced, that the technician did excellent regulation work, that the soundboard on this particular model is Sitka spruce, seasoned for at least 15 years. He could tell her all of that. Instead, he says, "No, ma'am." Victoria nods, satisfied. "It's a very expensive, very delicate instrument. Just clean it. Don't touch anything else. Do your job." She walks away, heels clicking already on her phone, discussing flower arrangements. The event planner mouths sorry to Calvin before hurrying after her. Calvin stands there for a moment, alone in the lobby, 10 feet from the piano. His hands are shaking. Not from anger, from something older, deeper. From a locked door inside him that Victoria's words just rattled. He gets his cleaning supplies, dusting cloth, polish. He approaches the Steinway the way someone might approach a sleeping lion, and he begins to clean, slowly, carefully. His cloth moves across the lacquered surface in gentle circles. He cleans every inch. The legs, the pedals, the music stand. He works with a care that goes beyond his job description, beyond what Victoria demanded. He cleans the way someone touches something sacred. And the whole time his jaw is clenched. His eyes are wet. 15 years of silence pressing against his ribs like a living thing demanding to be born. When he finishes, the piano gleams. Perfect. Untouched, except for the cleaning. Just as Victoria ordered. Calvin stands back, looks at it, looks at his reflection in the glossy black surface. He sees an old man in a janitor's uniform. Someone the world has decided is just the help. Someone whose gifts don't matter because his station doesn't allow for gifts. And something inside Calvin breaks. Not dramatically, not all at once, but like ice cracking on a frozen lake. You hear it before you see it. A sound that means everything is about to change. Victoria and her entourage leave. The lobby empties. It's 11:30 p.m. now. The hospital settles into its late-night rhythm. Fewer staff. Dimmer lights. The kind of quiet where you can hear your own heartbeat. Calvin should move on. Should finish his rounds. Should stick to the routine that sustained him for 15 years. He doesn't move. He stands in front of the Steinway, and memories crash over him like waves. Angela at their wedding laughing as Calvin played their first dance on a rented keyboard because they couldn't afford a band. The sound of 30 children singing in his classroom, their voices bright and pure. Mrs. Chen's weathered hands guiding his young fingers across the keys, teaching him that music was language, was freedom, was home. He remembers the last time he played. Really played. It was 2 weeks before Angela's funeral. She was home on hospice, too weak to leave the bedroom. Their church had loaned them a small upright piano, and Calvin set it up where she could hear. He played for 6 hours that day. Every piece she'd ever loved. Chopin nocturnes, Schubert impromptus, Beethoven sonatas, gospel hymns, show tunes, everything. His fingers flew, his heart broke, and Angela smiled from the bedroom. Morphine dulled, but still present, still listening. When he finished, she called him in, took his hand, said 4 words. "Don't stop playing, baby." He promised he wouldn't. He lied. Calvin closes his eyes, takes a breath, opens them. The lobby is empty. Security cameras point elsewhere. Nobody's watching. Nobody cares. He could just walk away. Maintain the promise he made to himself. Stay invisible. Stay safe. Or he could sit down. Calvin's hands move before his brain fully agrees. He pulls out the bench. Sits. Places his feet on the pedals. Lets his fingers hover over the keys. 15 years since he's done this. 15 years of silence and grief and buried beauty. His right hand trembles as it descends. Middle C. The note rings out pure and clear, and Calvin gasps like he's breaching water after being held under too long. Then his left hand, then both hands, then muscle memory that never really forgot, then soul that never really died. Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. Adagio sostenuto. Somber and haunting. Perfect for this moment, this hour, this long-delayed return. The first few measures are rough, fingers remembering, technique returning like an old friend from a long trip. But by the 8th measure, by the time the melody enters fully, something miraculous happens. Calvin isn't playing the notes. The notes are playing through him, and 15 years of silence transforms into music more beautiful than anything St. Mary's Hospital has ever heard. There's a reason Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata endures. It's not just beautiful, it's primal. It speaks to something ancient in the human soul. Loss, longing, the ache of being alive. Calvin plays it like a man possessed. His fingers dance across the keys with a fluidity that defies his 15-year absence. The muscle memory is there, yes, but it's more than that. It's like his body has been storing this music, holding it in his bones and blood, waiting for permission to release it. The opening arpeggios cascade like water, each note clear and distinct, yet flowing into the next seamlessly. His left hand provides the foundation's steady triplet figures that ground the ethereal right-hand melody. The dynamic control is extraordinary. Soft but not timid, sad but not defeated. This is playing that tells a story. And in Calvin's hands, that story is very specific. You can hear Angela in these notes. You can hear 20 years of teaching children. You can hear the basement piano with missing keys, the scholarship to art school, the wedding, the diagnosis, the funeral, the silence that followed. You can hear a life lived in service to beauty, then forced to abandon it. You can hear what it costs to survive grief. Calvin's eyes are closed. His face, usually carefully neutral, is transformed. Every emotion he's suppressed for 15 years plays across it like weather. Pain, joy, sorrow, release. His jaw works. His shoulders sway slightly with the music. He's not in the hospital lobby anymore. He's everywhere music has ever taken him. He's 7 years old, discovering that broken piano. He's 23, walking Angela down the aisle. He's holding his wife's hand as she takes her last breath. He's all of it simultaneously condensed into sound. The Moonlight Sonata is not a loud piece. It's marked pianissimo in most sections, but in the late-night quiet of St. Mary's, it carries. Down the hallway, Doctor. James Chen, no relation to Calvin's childhood teacher, stops mid-step. He's a third-year resident, 31 hours into a double shift running on coffee and adrenaline. He was headed to the break room for his 4th espresso when the music reaches him. He stops, turns, walks toward the sound like it's a physical summons. In the ICU waiting room, Margaret Foster hasn't left her vigil in 4 days. Her husband is on a ventilator, odds at 50-50, and she's been sitting in the same uncomfortable chair praying to a God she's not sure exists anymore. When the music filters through the hallway, she lifts her head. Something in those notes understands her grief. She rises, follows the sound. At the security desk, Tommy Rodriguez has worked night shift at St. Mary's for 21 years. He's seen everything. Births, deaths, miracles, tragedies. Nothing surprises him anymore. But when he hears the piano, actually hears it, not just background noodling, but real playing, he sits up straight. What the hell, he mutters, and abandons his post to investigate. One by one, they converge on the lobby. Dr. Chen arrives, first rounds the corner, and stops dead. Because it's not some visiting musician or hired performer sitting at that Steinway. It's Calvin Jenkins, the night janitor, the quiet guy who's been mopping these floors since Dr. Chen was in medical school. Calvin, whose uniform shirt is slightly rumpled, whose name tag reads Maintenance Services, whose hands are supposed to hold mops, not make music like this. Dr. Chen's mouth falls open. Margaret Foster arrives next. She sees Calvin and doesn't know who he is, but it doesn't matter. She sees a man pouring his soul into a piano, and she recognizes the language. She sits down on a nearby bench, and tears begin to stream down her face. Tommy Rodriguez rounds the corner, sees Calvin, and his first instinct is to check if he's supposed to be doing this, if this is allowed, if he needs to report it. Then he actually listens to what Calvin is playing, and he just stops, leans against the wall, crosses his arms, listens. Calvin hasn't noticed any of them. His eyes remain closed. The music continues to pour from the Steinway, like water from a long-blocked spring. The first movement of the Moonlight Sonata is about 5 minutes long. Calvin plays it perfectly. Not mechanically perfect, far better than that. Humanly perfect, with breath and space and rubato that makes the familiar melody feel new. When he finishes the first movement, he doesn't stop. He transitions directly into the second movement. Allegretto. Lighter, almost playful. A brief respite from the melancholy of the first movement, like sun breaking through clouds. More people arrive. A nurse named Patricia, carrying a med tray, stops in the hallway. A maintenance worker named Jose Calvin's co-worker emerges from the supply closet and freezes. An elderly patient, Mr. Kaminsky, who has insomnia and wanders the halls at night, shuffles toward the music with his walker. They gather like witnesses to a miracle. Because that's what this is. Not a performance. A miracle. The second movement dances along deceptively simple, requiring tremendous technical control to make it sound effortless. Calvin's fingers fly. Light touch, perfect articulation. You can hear him smile through the music, a brief moment of joy before the storm. Because everyone who knows the Moonlight Sonata knows what's coming. The third movement. Presto agitato. The hurricane. Calvin transitions into the third movement without pause, and the energy in the lobby shifts immediately. If the first movement was sorrow, and the second was relief, the third movement is fury. Fury at death. Fury at injustice. Fury at a world that takes and takes and takes until you have nothing left but rage and resilience. Calvin's hands attack the keyboard. The arpeggios are brutal, relentless, ascending and descending in waves of sound that crash against the walls. His whole body engages now, shoulders back, the full weight of his arms driving into the keys. This is not background music for cocktail parties. This is everything Calvin has held inside for 15 years unleashed. The technical difficulty is staggering. Octave runs at full speed, tremolos that require absolute precision, chromatic passages that would make most pianists weep. And Calvin plays it all. Like he's been practicing daily, like his hands never forgot, like the music has been waiting inside him fully formed. The small crowd in the lobby grows. Word has spread through the hospital in that mysterious way word spreads. Whispers on the walkie-talkies, texts between nurses. Someone's playing the piano in the lobby. No really playing. You have to hear this. Dr. Sandra Williams, an attending physician, comes down from the cardiac wing. 2 more nurses, an orderly, a cafeteria worker who was restocking the vending machines. They fill the benches, lean against walls, sit on the floor. Maybe 15 people now, then 20, 25. And they're not just listening. They're experiencing something. Mr. Kaminsky, the elderly insomniac, has tears running down his weathered cheeks. He survived the Battle of the Bulge 78 years ago, buried 2 wives, outlived 3 of his 4 children. He's not a man who cries easily. But something about this music, about watching this janitor play like an angel, cracks him open. Patricia, the nurse, pulls out her phone, starts recording. Not for social media, just for herself. So she can prove this happened. So she can remember. Jose Calvin's co-worker stands with his hands over his mouth. He's worked alongside Calvin for 8 years. They've shared maybe 1,000 words in that time, mostly about supply inventory and schedule changes. Jose had no idea. How could he have? Dr. Chen finds himself thinking about why he became a doctor. It wasn't for the money or prestige. It was because he wanted to help people to do something that mattered. But 31 hours into this shift, overwhelmed and exhausted, he'd forgotten that. This music reminds him. Beauty still exists. Grace still happens. Meaning still matters. Margaret Foster has stopped crying. She's smiling, a real smile. The first since her husband was intubated. Because this music is telling her something important. It's telling her that even after loss, even after your world shatters, beauty can return. Not the same beauty, transformed beauty, scarred beauty, but beauty nonetheless. The third movement of the Moonlight Sonata builds to a climax. The final page is a technical nightmare. Cascading runs in both hands requiring perfect synchronization and unrelenting speed. Calvin plays it flawlessly. The final chord rings out. Fortissimo. Triumphant despite everything. Silence. Calvin opens his eyes and sees the crowd. For a moment, Calvin just stares at the 25-30 people gathered in the lobby, watching him, some crying, some smiling, all transfixed. His first instinct is panic. He shouldn't be doing this. He's supposed to be cleaning. Someone might report him. He could get fired. He starts to stand. Please, someone says. It's Margaret Foster. Please don't stop. Play more. Mr. Kaminsky adds, his voice rough. Please. Calvin looks at them. Really looks. He sees their faces, their hunger for this. Their need. And he understands something he'd forgotten. Music doesn't belong to him. It never did. It belongs to everyone. It's meant to be shared, to connect, to heal. He sits back down. One more, he says quietly. He chooses Chopin. Nocturne in E-flat. Major Opus 9, number 2. One of the most beloved pieces in the piano repertoire. Romantic, lyrical, heartbreakingly beautiful. It was Angela's favorite. She used to play it on their old upright while Calvin graded papers at the kitchen table. Her technique was never as strong as his, but she played with such feeling that it didn't matter. She'd play it, and the cramped little house would feel like a palace. She requested it for their wedding. requested it for their anniversary dinners, hummed it while doing dishes or folding laundry. After she died, Calvin couldn't bear to hear it, couldn't play it. The association was too painful, but now in this hospital lobby surrounded by strangers who feel like companions, Calvin plays it for her. The opening is simple. A melody in the right hand accompanied by gentle arpeggios in the left. But the phrasing is everything. Where you breathe, where you lean into a note or pull away. How you shape each phrase like a sentence, each section like a paragraph. Calvin plays it the way Angela would have wanted, with love, with memory, with acceptance of what was and what is. The melody soars, rises, and falls like a bird in flight. The harmonies shift, color the emotion. Major to minor, and back again. Hope and sorrow dancing together. The crowd is utterly still. This isn't virtuosity for its own sake. This is communion. Dr. Williams, the attending physician, finds herself thinking about her mother who died of Alzheimer's 3 years ago. She thinks about the afternoon she sat by her mother's bedside, holding her hand, singing old hymns, because her mother couldn't remember words anymore, but could still feel music. This Chopin nocturne sounds like that day. Sounds like love persisting despite loss. Tommy Rodriguez, the security guard, thinks about his daughter. She's 7. She keeps asking for piano lessons. He keeps saying they can't afford it. Watching Calvin play Tommy makes a decision. They'll find a way. Beauty matters. Art matters. His daughter deserves to discover what this feels like. Jose thinks about his grandfather who played guitar in their village in Mexico. Never professional, just for joy, just to bring people together on hot evenings. Jose hasn't thought about his grandfather in years, but watching Calvin, he remembers. He remembers why beauty matters. The nocturne is about 4 minutes long. Calvin stretches it to 5, taking his time with the phrases, savoring each moment. When he reaches the final section, the decorative filigree that ornaments the return of the main theme, his fingers trace the notes like he's touching something precious and fragile. The piece ends quietly, gently, like falling asleep, like saying goodbye to someone you love. The last note fades into silence. Calvin sits very still, hands in his lap, breathing hard. And then from the back of the gathered crowd, someone starts to clap. It's not enthusiastic applause, not performance applause. It's the slow, heavy clapping of people who've witnessed something sacred. Others join. The sound builds, fills the lobby, echoes off the walls. Calvin stands, turns, faces them. His face is wet. He doesn't bother to hide it. "Thank you," he says simply. He looks at the clock. 11:58. He's been playing for almost 30 minutes. He's way behind on his cleaning rounds. "I need to get back to work," he says. "Who are you?" Dr. Chen asks. Calvin almost laughs. "I'm Calvin. I work here. Night shift maintenance." "No," Dr. Chen says. "I mean, who are you really? Where did you learn to play like that?" Calvin considers the question. 15 years of hiding, of being invisible, of telling himself his past doesn't matter. Maybe it's time for a different answer. But before he can speak, before he can decide how much to reveal, the lobby doors open, high heels on marble. Everyone turns. Victoria Harlow walks into the lobby, and the temperature in the room drops 10 degrees. Victoria Harlow is not supposed to be here. She left an hour ago, went home, poured herself a glass of wine, started reviewing catering contracts for the gala. Then she realized she'd left her leather portfolio in the hospital's conference room. The portfolio contains her notes, her donor contact list, her entire organizational system for the event. She needs it for a meeting first thing tomorrow morning. So she's back. Irritated. Tired. In no mood for surprises. She walks through the main entrance heels, echoing in the late-night quiet, and immediately notices something wrong. A crowd in the lobby. 30 people clustered around the piano. Her piano. The piano she explicitly ordered cleaned, but not touched. Her pace quickens. As she gets closer, she sees him. Calvin, the janitor, sitting at the Steinway, standing now, actually facing the crowd. His hands still positioned like he's just finished playing. Victoria's face flushes red. What she says, voice cutting through the silence like a blade, is going on here. The crowd parts. People step back, suddenly remembering their places in the hospital hierarchy. Victoria Harlow is on the board. She has power. They're just staff. Just visitors, just people who probably shouldn't be gathering in the lobby at midnight. Only a few people hold their ground. Dr. Chen, Margaret Foster, Tommy Rodriguez. Calvin turns to face Victoria. His expression is calm. Resigned, almost. Like he knew this was coming. he begins. You were just touching the piano, Victoria interrupts. After I explicitly told you not to. Do you understand what this instrument is worth? Do you understand that we have a professional performance in 3 days, and I can't have the action compromised by? She stops, looks around at the gathered crowd, seems to realize she's making a scene. Lowers her voice to something more controlled, but no less angry. I gave you very simple instructions. Clean it, don't touch it. Apparently that was too complicated, ma'am. Dr. Chen speaks up. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Victoria says, not looking at him, eyes fixed on Calvin. I understand that direct instructions were ignored. I understand that hospital property was misused. I understand that... She gestures at the crowd. This is completely inappropriate. Margaret Foster stands. He was playing for us. I didn't ask for commentary from visitors, Victoria says sharply. With all due respect, Dr. Chen tries again. Calvin was just... Calvin? Victoria says. Still not looking away from the janitor, is an employee who needs to do his job and nothing else. This piano is for qualified professionals, not for staff to mess around with whenever they feel like it. There's a beat of silence. Then Tommy Rodriguez speaks up. The security guard, 21 years at St. Mary's, has never challenged a board member in his life. Maybe you should hear him play, Tommy says. Victoria finally looks at him. Excuse me, before you keep going, Tommy says remarkably calm. Maybe you should actually hear him play. Because what we just heard... Ma'am, I've worked here long enough to see the piano played maybe a dozen times. Charity concerts, visiting performers, whatever. Nobody has ever played like that. Nobody. I don't need to hear him play, Victoria says. I need him to do what he's paid to do, which is clean, and I need all of you to disperse and return to your stations. No, someone says. It's Patricia, the nurse. Small woman, usually quiet, never makes waves. But she's standing now, holding her phone. No, I don't think so. Victoria stares at her. I'm sorry. You should hear him play, Patricia says, and there's steel in her voice. You should see what you're about to throw away because you can't see past a job title. This is absurd, Victoria says. She turns back to Calvin. You're finished here. Report to HR first thing tomorrow morning. We'll discuss disciplinary action. For now, you're suspended pending review. Calvin nods. Doesn't argue. Yes, ma'am? He steps away from the piano, starts to gather his cleaning supplies. And that's when Mr. Kaminsky speaks. The elderly veteran. The man who survived World War II, who's seen humanity at its worst and best, who has maybe a year left to live, according to his latest diagnosis. "Shame on you," he says to Victoria. She turns. "What?" "Shame on you." Mr. Kaminsky repeats louder. "I'm 89 years old. I've heard music in concert halls from Paris to Prague. I heard Horowitz play in 1987. I heard Rubinstein in 74. And this man," he points at Calvin with a shaking finger, "this man just played more beautifully than any of them. And you're going to fire him because he doesn't wear the right uniform. Sir, you don't understand the situation. I understand perfectly," Mr. Kaminsky says. "I understand that you care more about your rules than you do about beauty, more about control than about grace. And I understand that you're about to make a terrible mistake." Victoria's jaw tightens. "Everyone needs to leave. Now. This lobby is closing. Let him play," Dr. Chen says. "Just one more song," Margaret Foster adds. "One song," Patricia echoes. The crowd picks it up. Not chanting. Too respectful for that. But repeating it soft and insistent. One song. Let him play. Just one more. Victoria looks around at them. 30 people, staff and patients and visitors, united against her. She's used to compliance, used to her authority being unquestioned. This is not that. She could push it, could call more security, could make this a thing. But even she recognizes that would look bad, very bad. The optics of a wealthy board member silencing a janitor while staff and patients beg for music. Not great. She makes a calculation. "Fine," she says coldly. "One song. Then everyone leaves. Then Calvin and I have a conversation about following instructions." She crosses her arms. Waits. Everyone looks at Calvin. Calvin stands between his cleaning cart and the Steinway. He should walk away. Take the suspension. Accept it. He violated protocol. She has every right. But 30 people are looking at him, waiting, believing he has something worth defending. He thinks about Angela, about Don't Stop Playing Baby. He thinks about Mrs. Chen teaching a 7-year-old boy that music was freedom. He thinks about 20 years of students learning that they could create beauty regardless of where they came from. He looks at Victoria Harlow, really looks at her. And for just a second, something flickers in his memory. Something about her face. Familiar somehow. But he can't place it, and the moment passes. "One song," he says. He sits back down at the piano. Victoria remains standing, arms crossed, near the entrance, close enough to watch, far enough to maintain her disapproval. Calvin places his hands on the keys. What do you play in a moment like this? What music speaks to the complexity of what's happening? The injustice, the defiance, the beauty of people standing together against arbitrary authority. Calvin chooses Rachmaninoff. Prelude in C-sharp, minor, Opus 3, number 2, one of the most famous pieces in the piano repertoire. Nicknamed the Bells of Moscow, known for its thunderous chords, its technical brutality, its emotional devastation. It's not a piece you play casually. It's a piece that demands everything from the performer. Full body engagement, absolute precision, and emotional courage to sustain the intensity for 4 solid minutes. Calvin hasn't played it in 16 years. He begins. The opening chords are massive, fortissimo. The whole piano rings. These are the bells of the title. Deep, resonant, ominous. The sound physically moves through the lobby. You don't just hear it. You feel it in your chest. Victoria flinches slightly. She wasn't expecting this. The chords continue. Relentless. Each one perfectly voiced, the balance between the hands exquisite. This isn't just hitting keys hard. This is controlled power. This is knowing exactly how to make the piano sing even when you're making it shout. Then the melody enters. right hand singing over the continuing bell tones in the left. Urgent yearning, desperate. This is music about struggle, about fighting against forces larger than yourself, about refusing to surrender even when defeat seems certain. Calvin plays with his entire body. His shoulders drive the chords. His back sways with the melody. His face is fierce, concentrated, alive. The crowd is riveted. Dr. Chen has pulled out his phone recording. So has Patricia Jose, several others. They need evidence, need proof, need to be able to say this really happened. The piece builds. The technical demands are savage, octaves cascading up and down the keyboard, chords in both hands simultaneously. A middle section that requires the lightest touch for contrast before crashing back into the thunderous main theme. Calvin navigates it all like he's been playing it daily. Because muscle memory is a strange thing. You can bury it for years, decades, but it never truly disappears. It waits. And when you need it, when you finally give it permission, it returns like it never left. Mr. Kaminsky is weeping openly now. "My God," he whispers. "My God." Margaret Foster has her hands clasped to her chest. Her husband is still upstairs, still on the ventilator, still 50-50. But right now, listening to this music, she feels hope. Real hope, not the desperate kind, the kind that acknowledges darkness but believes in light anyway. Tommy Rodriguez has completely abandoned his post. He's sitting on the floor back against the wall, experiencing something he'll talk about for the rest of his life. And Victoria. Victoria is still standing by the entrance, arms still crossed, face still set in disapproval. But watch her closely. Her right hand has moved. It's gripping her left arm tightly. Her jaw is clenched. Her eyes are fixed on Calvin with an intensity that's not quite anger anymore. Something else is happening in her face, something she's fighting hard to suppress. The Rachmaninoff builds to its climax, the return of the main theme, but bigger now, fuller, more insistent. The bells ring out massive chords that make the piano's frame vibrate. Calvin's hands fly across the keys. Perfect technique, perfect musicality, perfect everything. And then he does something unexpected. There's a section near the end where most pianists slow down slightly, take a breath before the final push. Calvin doesn't. He drives through it, maintains the tempo, the intensity, the relentlessness. It's an interpretive choice that says something. It says, I will not yield. I will not diminish. I am here, I am alive, I matter. The final chords arrive. Massive, declarative. The sound fills every corner of the lobby, echoes off the walls, hangs in the air, even after Calvin's hands leave the keys. Silence. Complete and total silence. Calvin sits very still, breathing hard, hands trembling from exertion, sweat on his forehead. The crowd is frozen. And then Mr. Kaminsky starts to applaud. Not polite applause. Raw, fierce applause. Clapping so hard his arthritic hands must hurt. The others join. Dr. Chen, Patricia, Tommy, Jose, Margaret, all of them. 30 people applauding like their lives depend on it. Some are crying. Most are smiling. All are changed. Calvin stands, turns, looks at them. Then he looks at Victoria. She hasn't moved, hasn't applauded. But her arms have fallen to her sides. And her face is doing something strange. The careful control is cracking. Her eyes are bright. Her lips are trembling. She's staring at Calvin like she's seen a ghost. Where? She starts. then stops. Her voice is rough. "Where did you learn to play that piece?" Calvin is surprised by the question. "I studied music. Long time ago. Who taught you Victoria presses?" "Where did you study Detroit School of Arts?" Calvin says. "And before that, a teacher in my building, Mrs. Chen." Victoria goes very still. "What was your name again?" she whispers. "Calvin Jenkins." Victoria's face has gone pale. Absolutely pale. "You taught piano," she says, "in Detroit, public schools." It's not a question. Calvin's eyes widen. How did you know that Victoria takes a step forward, then another? She's moving toward him like she's in a trance. When she's 10 feet away, she stops. "Southwest Elementary," she says. 1992. "You taught there?" Calvin stares at her. "Yes." "How?" And then suddenly he sees it. The connection his mind was groping for earlier. This woman in her designer suit with her expensive haircut and her entitled attitude. Take away 30 years, make her 12 years old, put her in a school uniform. "Victoria," he says, stunned. "Victoria Wagner." She nods. "Once." Tears are streaming down her face now, and she's making no effort to hide them. "You taught me," she says. "You taught me piano. For 2 years." The lobby has gone completely silent. Everyone senses something profound is happening, but only Calvin and Victoria understand what. Calvin's mind is reeling. Victoria Wagner. He remembers her now. Small for her age, shy. Came to Southwest Elementary through some kind of magnet program, one of the few white kids at a predominantly black school. Her family had money, you could tell from the quality of her clothes, the brand new backpack, the fact that she brought lunch from home in an actual lunchbox instead of eating cafeteria food. She wasn't musical at first. Clumsy hands, poor rhythm. But she worked hard, stayed after school for extra practice, never complained. Calvin remembers spending hours with her breaking down pieces into manageable sections, teaching her to hear the spaces between notes as music, too. "You had trouble with the left hand," Calvin says slowly, the memory crystallizing. "Couldn't get the coordination with the right." "We worked on Für Elise for 3 months. Victoria laughs. A wet, broken sound. "You made me practice hands separately, 50 times each before I could put them together. I hated it." "But it worked," Calvin says. "It worked," Victoria agrees. The crowd is watching this exchange like it's a play. Dr. Chen has lowered his phone. This feels too private to record. "You gave a recital." Calvin continues, more memories flooding back. End of year. Spring, 1994. "You played," he thinks. "Mozart. Sonata in C major. The easy one. K545, Victoria says. "I was terrified. Thought I'd forget everything." "You didn't forget. You played perfectly. Your parents came." Victoria's face does something complicated. "My father came. Once. My mother never did. She didn't think public school music was serious enough." Calvin remembers now. Victoria's mother pulling her from the program after 2 years, enrolling her in a private conservatory. More appropriate instruction, she'd said, as if Calvin's teaching was substandard because of where he taught who he taught. "You left after 8th grade, Calvin says. "We moved," Victoria says. "North Shore. My parents thought I should be around the right kind of people." The bitterness in her voice is sharp. "Did you keep playing?" Victoria hesitates. "For a while. Private lessons. A teacher from the Chicago Symphony. Very expensive. Very prestigious. But But she never taught me the way you did. She taught technique. You taught music. There's a difference. She wipes her eyes with the back of her hand. Her carefully applied makeup is ruined. She doesn't seem to care. I stopped playing when I was 16, she says. My mother said it wasn't practical. Said I should focus on academics, get into a good school, marry well. So I did. Northwestern. MBA. Married a surgeon. Did everything right. Are you happy? Calvin asks, gently. The question breaks something in Victoria. She actually sobs. I don't even know what that word means anymore. The crowd has collectively held its breath. This is not what anyone expected. The imperious board member is dissolving before them, revealing something wounded and human underneath. I became exactly what they wanted, Victoria continues. Successful, wealthy, connected. And I forgot. I forgot what it felt like to create something beautiful. I forgot what you taught me. What did I teach you? Calvin asks. Victoria looks at him directly. That music wasn't about being perfect. It was about being honest. You said, God, I haven't thought about this in years. You said that every time you play, you're having a conversation. The composer talks to you across time, and you talk back through the notes. And if you're honest, if you really listen and really speak, then it doesn't matter if you make mistakes. The truth comes through. Calvin smiles. I said that a lot. You meant it, Victoria says. And I believed you. For 2 years, I believed music could matter more than anything. Then I spent 30 years trying to forget that because it didn't fit the life I was supposed to lead. She looks at the piano, at her hands, at Calvin. And then tonight, I came in here and treated you like you were nothing. Like you were just the help. I didn't even recognize you. It's been 30 years, Calvin says. We're both older. That's not an excuse, Victoria says fiercely. I should have recognized something. The way you moved around the piano, the care you took cleaning it, something should have clicked. She takes a shaky breath. But I was too busy being who I've become. Too busy keeping people in their boxes so I don't have to examine my own. Too busy protecting my authority to see the human being in front of me. Victoria walks closer to Calvin. She's composed herself slightly, but the tears are still there. I owe you an apology, she says. A real one, not a polite one. Victoria. No, please. Let me say this. She takes a breath. I treated you abhorrently tonight. I was condescending, dismissive, and cruel. I didn't see you. I saw a job title and decided that was all there was, and that's inexcusable. She gestures to the piano. You have a gift, a profound gift. And instead of celebrating it, instead of being grateful that this hospital is lucky enough to have someone like you in it, I tried to silence you. I tried to make you small. Her voice cracks. I tried to do to you exactly what was done to me. Keep you in your box. Don't reach above your station. Do what you're told, and nothing more. She laughs bitterly. God, I've become my mother. Calvin shakes his head. You're not. I am, Victoria interrupts. I absolutely am. And the worst part, I don't even have the excuse of ignorance. You taught me better. You showed me that every person has depths you can't see on the surface. That a kid from a poor neighborhood could have perfect pitch. That talent doesn't care about zip codes or tax brackets. You taught me that, and I forgot it. She looks at the gathered crowd, at the nurses and doctors and patients and staff who stood up for Calvin. They didn't forget, she says. They saw immediately what I refused to see. That you're extraordinary. She turns back to Calvin. So I'm sorry. I'm profoundly, deeply sorry. For tonight, for not recognizing you. For 30 years of becoming someone who would treat another human being the way I treated you. The lobby is utterly silent. Calvin looks at this woman, this former student, this person who could fire him, who has power over his livelihood, who's standing in front of him crying and broken and real. "Victoria," he says gently. "It's okay." "It's not okay," she says. "No," he agrees. "But it's human. We all have days where we're less than we should be. We all forget sometimes what matters." He smiles slightly. "You remembered tonight." "That counts?" Victoria shakes her head. "Only because you played. If you hadn't—" "But I did," Calvin says. "And you heard it. And you remembered. That's what music does. It reminds us who we really are under all the other stuff." He extends his hand. "I forgive you. Clean slate." Victoria stares at his hand. Then she takes it, holds it with both of hers. "Thank you," she whispers. They stand there for a moment, teacher and student. 30 years later, finding each other again through music. Victoria releases Calvin's hand, turns to face the crowd, wipes her eyes, takes a breath. When she speaks, her voice is clear, decisive. The board member returning, but changed. "The suspension is canceled," she announces. Obviously. Relief washes over the gathered crowd. Victoria continues, "And I'm calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning. We need to discuss Calvin's role at this hospital." Calvin tenses. "Ma'am, I understand if you need to make changes." "I do need to make changes," Victoria says, "but not the kind you're thinking." She looks at the piano, then at him. "We have a beautiful instrument that nobody plays. We have patients who spend weeks in this building dealing with fear and pain and uncertainty. We have staff who work brutal hours and go home exhausted and forget why they chose this profession." She gestures around the lobby. "And tonight, for 30 minutes, you gave everyone here something they didn't know they needed. You created beauty, connection, hope. You reminded people that grace still exists." She meets his eyes. "So tomorrow I'm going to propose that we create a new position. Music therapist, part-time initially, someone who can play for patients, teach interested staff, bring life to this instrument." Calvin's eyes widen. "Victoria, you're qualified," she says. "Overqualified, actually. Music education degree, 20 years teaching experience, and obviously," she gestures at the piano, "you can play." "I'm 63 years old," Calvin says. "I haven't taught in 15 years. You just taught everyone in this lobby something profound," Victoria counters. "You taught us that it's never too late, that beauty matters, that people are always more than they appear." She smiles. A real smile. Warm. "Besides, you'll keep your maintenance position if you want it. This would be additional. We'd work around your schedule." Calvin is speechless. Dr. Chen speaks up. "I'll vote for it. I'm not on the board, but I'll write a letter. Make a case." "So will I," Patricia adds. "Me too," says Tommy. "All of us," Margaret Foster says, and the crowd murmurs agreement. Victoria nods. "I don't think I'll have trouble getting votes." "Not after—" She looks at her phone. "Not after this." She holds up the screen. Patricia's recording, posted to the hospital's internal social media 15 minutes ago. Already shared 40 times. The view count is climbing. "By morning, everyone will know," Victoria says. "Administration, board members, donors. They'll all see what happened here tonight." Calvin should probably be worried about that, about his privacy, about being exposed. But instead he feels something else, something he hasn't felt in 15 years. Pride. Not the arrogant kind, the quiet kind, the kind that says, "I made something beautiful and it mattered." "I don't know what to say," he admits. "Say you'll think about it," Victoria suggests. "Take a few days. Talk to whoever you need to talk to. Then let me know. She extends her hand again. This time, it's not forgiveness. It's partnership. Calvin shakes it. I'll think about it. Good. Victoria checks her watch. It's nearly 1 a.m. Everyone should go home. Get some rest. She looks at Calvin. Especially you. You've earned it. The crowd begins to disperse slowly. People pause to shake Calvin's hand, thank him, tell him what the music meant. Mr. Kaminsky hugs him, tears still wet on his weathered face. Margaret Foster squeezes his hand and whispers, "My husband would have loved this." Within 10 minutes, the lobby is mostly empty. Just Calvin Victoria and Tommy Rodriguez, who's technically supposed to be on duty. I should get back to rounds, Tommy says, but he's smiling. Best night shift in 21 years. He leaves. Now it's just Calvin and Victoria. Victoria, Calvin says. Can I ask you something? Of course, when you stopped playing. When you were 16. Did you miss it? Victoria is quiet for a long moment. Every single day, she finally says, for 30 years, every single day. Why didn't you go back to it? Same reason you didn't, I suspect, she says. Life got in the way, and after a while it felt too late, like I'd given up the right to it. Calvin nods. He understands that feeling intimately, but it's not too late, he says. Not for you either. Victoria looks at the piano. I haven't played in 30 years. I'd be terrible. So practice, Calvin says. Relearn. It comes back faster than you think. She smiles. Is that your professional opinion? Music therapist, Jenkins? I haven't accepted the position yet, he reminds her. But you will, she says confidently. Why are you so sure? Because you just played the Rachmaninoff prelude after 15 years of silence. Because Angela told you not to stop and you're finally listening. Because you're a teacher and teachers teach. It's what you are. She's right, and Calvin knows it. I'll think about it, he repeats. Good. Victoria picks up her forgotten portfolio from where she left it by the entrance. I should go. Big day tomorrow. She starts to leave, then stops. Turns back. Calvin. Yes, thank you. For tonight. For remembering me. For... She searches for words. For showing me it's possible to find your way back. Thank you for listening, Calvin says. Victoria nods. Leaves. Calvin stands alone in the lobby with the Steinway. He should finish his rounds. Should get back to work. Should return to routine. Instead, he sits down at the piano one more time. And very quietly, so quietly it barely carries, he plays one last piece. Für Elise, the simple Beethoven piece he taught Victoria Wagner 30 years ago. He plays it perfectly, gently, like a lullaby, like a promise to himself. Don't stop playing, baby. Never again. The emergency board meeting happens at 8 a.m. Friday morning, less than 9 hours after Calvin's performance. Victoria presents her proposal. Position title: Music Therapist and Patient Services Coordinator, 20 hours per week. Responsibilities include playing piano for patients, teaching interested staff, coordinating musical programming for hospital events, and maintaining the Steinway. She doesn't have to argue hard. By the time she's finished her presentation, Patricia's video has been viewed over 3,000 times. Half the hospital staff has shared it. Someone posted it to Reddit, where it's climbed to the front page. Local news stations are calling, asking for interviews. The public relations director does quick math. This is the best publicity St. Mary's has gotten in years. heartwarming. Human interest. The kind of story that makes donors feel good about writing checks. The vote is unanimous. Calvin gets the call at noon Friday. Victoria herself makes it. The position is yours if you want it. 20 hours a week, flexible schedule, benefits included. You can keep your maintenance position too if you'd like reduced hours, or transition fully to music. Your choice. Calvin sits in his small apartment, phone pressed to his ear, and thinks about Angela. She would tell him to take it. Would tell him he's been given a second chance and only a fool wastes those. I'll take it, he says. Both positions. I'll do maintenance part-time and music part-time. Are you sure? Victoria asks. That's a lot of hours. I've spent 15 years half alive, Calvin says. I can handle being fully alive for a while. Victoria laughs. Okay. You start Monday. I'll have HR process the paperwork. Monday morning, Calvin shows up for his first shift as music therapist at 9 a.m. Someone has made him a new name tag. It reads Calvin Jenkins, music therapist. Under it, in smaller letters, maintenance services. Both titles, both roles, both parts of who he is. Victoria meets him in the lobby. She's dressed more casually than he's ever seen her. Slacks and a sweater instead of a power suit. She looks younger, lighter. Ready? She asks. I think so, Calvin says. What's the plan? Well, Victoria says, I thought we'd start in pediatrics. There's a 6-year-old girl, Emily, who's been here for 2 weeks with leukemia. She's scared. Her parents are exhausted. I thought maybe some music would help. Calvin's throat tightens. This is why he became a teacher. This right here. The chance to bring beauty to people who need it most. Let's go, he says. They take the elevator to the 3rd floor, walk to Emily's room. Victoria knocks gently. Emily's mother answers. Young woman, mid-30s, with the particular exhaustion that comes from keeping vigil by a sick child's bed. Mrs. Patterson, Victoria says. I'm Victoria Harlow from the hospital board. This is Calvin Jenkins, our new music therapist. We were wondering if Emily might like some music. Mrs. Patterson's eyes fill with tears. She would love that. She hasn't smiled in 3 days. Emily is tiny in the hospital bed. Bald from chemotherapy. 4 in her arm. Dark circles under her eyes that no 6-year-old should have. Calvin rolls the small, upright piano from the hallway into her room. It's nothing fancy. Not like the Steinway. Just a functional instrument for exactly this purpose. He sits down. Hi, Emily. I'm Calvin. What kind of music do you like? Emily's voice is small. Disney songs. Calvin smiles. I know a lot of Disney songs. What's your favorite Beauty and the Beast? Emily whispers. Calvin's hands find the keys. He plays the opening notes of Tale as Old as Time, slowly, gently, making it soft enough for a scared little girl who needs comfort. And as he plays, Emily's eyes brighten. Her mother starts crying. And Calvin remembers why music matters. It's not about concert halls or applause or recognition. It's about this. A little girl forgetting her fear for 3 minutes. A mother finding a moment of peace. Connection happening through sound. When Calvin finishes, Emily claps. Weak but real. More, she asks. Calvin plays more. A whole new world. Part of your world. Let it go. He plays for 40 minutes. By the end, Emily is singing along quietly. Her mother is smiling. And Calvin's heart is full in a way it hasn't been since Angela died. This is home. This is purpose. This is why he was given hands. Word spreads fast in the hospital. By Tuesday, Calvin has requests for music from 6 different departments. Oncology wants him to play for their support group. The ICU asks if he can come during visiting hours. Labor and delivery wonders if music might help women in early labor. He says yes to everything. Mornings he plays, afternoons and evenings he cleans. The combination feels right, honoring both the work that sustained him through dark years and the gift he'd buried. On Wednesday, something unexpected happens. Victoria shows up at the lobby piano at 6 p.m. She's carrying something, a leather music bag worn with age. "I found my old sheet music," she says, "in my parents' attic. Haven't looked at it in 20 years. She sits down at the Steinway, opens to a familiar piece. Mozart Sonata in C major, K 545, the piece she played at her recital in 1994. "I probably can't even remember it," she warns. "Try Calvin," encourages. Victoria's hands are shaking as she positions them on the keys. She begins. She's rusty. Very rusty. Misses notes. Fumbles transitions. At one point, she stops completely frustrated. "I can't," she says. "You can," Calvin says. "Muscle memory. Give it time." She tries again. This time she makes it through the first section. It's not polished, but it's there. The music is still in her fingers, waiting. By the end of the week, Victoria is coming every day, practicing for an hour after work, relearning pieces she played 30 years ago, slowly, carefully finding her way back. "I forgot how much I missed this," she tells Calvin on Friday. "How much of myself I gave up." "You're finding it again," Calvin says. "That's what matters. Other staff start showing up too. Turns out half the nurses wanted to learn piano as kids, but never got the chance. A surgical resident plays guitar. An administrator used to sing opera. Calvin starts offering lessons. Wednesday evenings, 6 to 9 p.m., free for hospital staff. He teaches the way Mrs. Chen taught him. With patience. With belief that everyone has music in them, the lobby becomes alive in a way it's never been. People gather during lunch breaks to hear Calvin play. Patients in wheelchairs come down from their floors. Families waiting for news sit by the piano and find comfort in the sound. The Steinway, silent for 15 years, is finally fulfilling its purpose, and Calvin is finally fulfilling his. Saturday night, the Healing Hearts Gala. 500 donors in evening wear. Champagne flowing. Catered salmon, as predicted. The hospital's largest fundraiser of the year. The hired pianist from the Chicago Symphony was canceled. Victoria made that call personally. "We have our own pianist now," she told them. "Someone better." Calvin wears a tuxedo, borrowed from Dr. Chen, who's roughly his size. It's not a perfect fit, but it's good enough. He sits at the Steinway at 7 p.m. as cocktail hour begins. Plays Chopin, Debussy, Gershwin. Background music mostly. The kind of playing that creates atmosphere without demanding attention. But here's the thing about true artistry. It finds a way to be heard. By 7:30, conversations have quieted. People are listening. Really listening. By 8, they've formed a crowd around the piano. Champagne forgotten. Networking postponed. Calvin plays for 90 minutes straight. He doesn't perform the dramatic pieces from that first night. He plays the gentle ones, the beautiful ones. Music that heals instead of challenges. At 8:30, Victoria steps to a microphone to give her speech. She tells Calvin's story. Not all of it. Just enough. A teacher who became a janitor, who never stopped having music in his soul, who played one night and changed everything. "This hospital is about healing," Victoria says. "We heal bodies, but we often forget that people need more than that. They need beauty, connection, reminders that life contains grace even in dark times." She gestures to Calvin. "This man reminded us of that. And I'm proud to announce that St. Mary's Hospital has established a new music therapy program in his honor. We're raising funds tonight, not just for medical equipment and research, but for art, for music, for the things that make us human. The crowd applauds. The fundraising total that night is the highest in the gala's history, $2.3 million, a third of it earmarked specifically for the music therapy program. After his performance, donors line up to shake Calvin's hand. They tell him what the music meant. Several write personal checks for the program on the spot. Mr. Kaminsky is there in a wheelchair, now attending as a patient guest. He grips Calvin's hand with surprising strength. "I'm glad I lived long enough to hear you play again," he says. "You'll hear me many more times," Calvin promises. Margaret Foster is there too. Her husband survived. Off the ventilator recovering. She introduces Calvin to him, tells him about the night the music brought her hope. As the gala winds down, Victoria finds Calvin by the piano. "You did it," she says. "You changed everything." Calvin shakes his head. "Music did it. I just played. Don't be modest," Victoria says. "You took a risk. You sat down at this piano when you could have stayed invisible. You chose to be seen." She's right. That night, 2 weeks ago, Calvin made a choice. To honor Angela's words, to honor his gift, to stop hiding. "Thank you," he tells Victoria, "for giving me a second chance." "You gave me one too," she says. "So we're even." They stand together looking at the Steinway. The lobby is nearly empty now. Staff cleaning up, donors heading home. "Same time Wednesday for your lesson?" Calvin asks. Victoria smiles. "Wouldn't miss it." She leaves. Calvin is alone with the piano one last time tonight. He sits down, plays one more piece for himself. For Angela, wherever she is. For Mrs. Chen, who believed in a 7-year-old boy. For every student he ever taught. For everyone who needs to know that it's never too late to come home to yourself. He plays Schubert, impromptu in G-flat major. It's tender and contemplative and achingly beautiful. When he finishes, he whispers, "I'm playing again, baby, just like you asked." And somehow in the silence of the empty lobby, he swears he hears her answer. "I know, I heard." 6 months have passed since that November night when Calvin Jenkins sat down at a piano and changed his life. The music therapy program at St. Mary's Hospital has grown beyond anyone's expectations. Calvin now works 30 hours a week. Full-time music, no more maintenance. He plays for patients every morning, teaches staff lessons 3 evenings a week, and coordinates monthly concerts in the lobby. The hospital hired a second music therapist to help with demand, then a third. What started as one man and one piano has become a department. Studies are already showing results. Patients who receive music therapy have lower pain scores, reduced anxiety, shorter hospital stays. The data is compelling enough that insurance companies are starting to cover it. But more than the data, there are the stories. Emily, the 6-year-old with leukemia, is in remission now. She takes piano lessons with Calvin every Saturday. Says she wants to be a music therapist when she grows up. Mr. Kaminsky passed away in January, peacefully surrounded by family. Calvin played at his funeral. Moonlight Sonata at the family's request. Margaret Foster's husband made a full recovery. They attended Calvin's Christmas concert together. She told him, "That night you played when my husband was on the ventilator, your music gave me something to hold on to. I think it's part of why I didn't give up." Dr. Chen is learning piano. He's terrible at it, but he comes to lessons faithfully every Wednesday, grateful for something beautiful in his life beyond medicine. Victoria Harlow has been practicing for 6 months. She'll never be a virtuoso, but she doesn't need to be. She plays for joy now, for herself. She's reclaimed the part of her soul she thought was lost, And she and Calvin have become friends, real friends. They have coffee once a week, talk about music and life and second chances. Do you ever regret it? Victoria asked him recently. The 15 years you didn't play Calvin thought about it. I regret that Angela didn't get to see this, that she died thinking I'd given it up forever. But the years themselves, they shaped me, made me who I needed to be to appreciate this second chance. He smiled. Besides, you can't regret the wilderness if it teaches you to value the oasis. Today is a Thursday in May. Calvin arrives at St. Mary's at 8 a.m. for his morning rounds. He's scheduled to play in the pediatric wing, then oncology, then a special session for hospice patients. As he walks through the lobby, he stops, just for a moment, just like he used to in his maintenance days. But now, instead of looking at the piano with longing, he approaches it with ownership. This is his instrument, his home, his purpose. He sits down, plays a few scales to warm up, then launches into Bach because Bach in the morning feels like hope sounds. And here's the truth that Calvin has learned. It's never too late, not to reclaim your gifts, not to honor your calling, not to become who you were always meant to be. Society will put you in boxes, will tell you that job titles define worth, will insist that someone who cleans floors can't possibly create beauty, will demand you stay small, stay quiet, stay in your designated place. But your gifts don't care about society's boxes. Your soul doesn't respect arbitrary boundaries. And music, true music, honest music, will always find a way to be heard. Calvin Jenkins spent 15 years silent. 15 years believing he'd forfeited the right to his own gift. 15 years invisible. Then one night, he chose visibility, chose honesty, chose to honor the promise he'd made to the woman he loved. And in choosing himself, he gave permission to everyone around him to do the same. Victoria reclaimed her music. Dr. Chen discovered beauty beyond medicine. Margaret Foster found hope in dark hours. Emily learned that even in the hospital, magic exists. All because one man sat down at a piano and refused to stay silent anymore. This is the power of second chances, of choosing courage over comfort, of believing that your gifts matter regardless of your station. This is what happens when we stop letting the world tell us who we're allowed to be. Calvin plays his final notes for the morning. Bach resolves in a perfect cadence. He stands, prepares for his rounds. Somewhere he likes to think Angela is listening, smiling, proud of him for finally keeping his promise. Don't stop playing, baby. He won't. Never again. Because every person in this world has a piano waiting for them. Some gift they've buried, some calling they've ignored, some truth they've silenced because the world said it wasn't practical or appropriate or worthy, but it's there, always there, waiting for permission to sing. And it's never ever too late to give that permission. It's never too late to sit down. It's never too late to place your hands on the keys. It's never too late to play.